All right, good morning, my friends. Happy Halloween. I hope all you garbage listeners and garbage viewers are doing well. Today is going to be a little bit different from what I did yesterday. So this morning, I woke up and did the normal routine. I started flipping through X. I started scrolling through Facebook, started looking at some of the news websites that I look at every morning. And when I opened Facebook today, I came across a open letter that was written by one of the people that I am friends with and follow on Facebook. And it was to his fellow evangelicals saying the biblical case against Donald Trump, right? Thought it was pretty interesting. So I clicked on it, and one of the first things that I thought is, I'm kind of ignorant, I'll say, in this area, because I don't even know what an evangelical is, or I didn't know what an evangelical is. When I heard the term evangelical being thrown around by the media and by politicians and whatnot, I always essentially just thought it was, a Christian who obeys Christian values heavily, right? So one of the things I wanted to do right away was go and look up what people actually mean when they say an evangelical. Is it any different from what I thought it was, right? So I went to my friend on the internet here, good old Chat GPT, and just asked the plain question of what is an evangelical, right? And you can see the answer here. An evangelical is typically a Protestant Christian who emphasizes certain core beliefs and practices centered around the importance of a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, the authority of the Bible, and the mission to share the Christian faith with others. The term evangelical comes from the Greek word meaning good news or gospel, referring to the message of salvation through Jesus. Right, and you can see it says evangelicals generally hold these key characteristics: biblical authority, personal faith in Christ, evangelism, and mission, focus on Jesus' death and resurrection. Okay, so I guess loosely speaking, I understood what the evangelical term meant, but then I'll get into this article that was written. Again, it was called "The Biblical Case Against Donald Trump." So it begins by saying, my fellow evangelicals, and the author goes on to give a paragraph of his credentials, such as being a son of a pastor, attending an evangelical Bible college, attending evangelical university, evangelical seminary, ordained in an evangelical denomination, and on and on. All right. The second paragraph kind of goes, many of you know that Donald Trump is not a man that exhibits even the most basic of Christian virtues. All right. I somewhat agree with that statement. I mean, Donald Trump is not someone who I see regularly going to church. He's not someone who talks about his faith all that much. He does some of the fake stuff where he, goes and holds up a Bible in front of the church at DC, which everyone knew is kind of fake. And the guy's a, master of production, and master of getting his word out in the media, even with things like his show originally, The Apprentice. But, agree that Donald Trump is not a pure Christian by any means, right? The author then goes on to say, since our shared values are rooted in the Bible, I'd like to carry out a scriptural experiment. And then he talks about some things in the Bible that talk about essentially showing who live by the flesh, or who live, by the means of an evangelical, and then, by the flesh is actually the opposite. By the flesh is shorthand for baser instincts such as sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, adultery, sorcery, strife, jealousy, anger, quarrels, dissensions, faction, envy, drunkenness, etc. And then he said there's those who live by the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. All right. So his question then is posed. Now, here's the question. As you look at these two lists, which better describes the character of Donald Trump? Okay, fair enough. Right? I would say that the majority of what you see in the media shows Trump less on the spirit side and more on the by the flesh side, right? He's a very rich person. You can see that he is angry with things, and I mean, people and the media and the way that he's been treated. Immortality, we all know the thing with Stormy Daniels. I'm sure there's probably some others. Then it goes on to talk about, if you honestly believe that Donald Trump exhibits the fruits of the spirits, the good things, this letter's not for you, right? The argument that he then goes on to make, regarding, he talks about Donald Trump being pro-life, and this author's pro-life friends often argue that Trump's pro-life, policy make up for his basic character flaws. All right, and he says he disagrees with this. He understands the logic, which is good, but the main point he's saying is that the ends do not justify the means, right? And thing that I'll read verbatim here is, however, my counter-argument is simple. As people who believe the Word of God is our highest authority, the Bible's overarching narrative insists that the way we do something is as important as the result. The means matter just as much as the end, right? And then he goes on in the next few paragraphs to give two examples of stories in the Bible where the ends are not justified by the means, or the means are not justified by the ends, right? And he gives two good examples of these. What I have to say after reading all this is I agree with the article, and I agree with the two examples that he gave, and I think the narrative behind them makes sense. It's a logical article, and it follows his beliefs. But yet he goes on to say, yet if evangelicals wish to maintain any credibility, especially as a movement that has long preached the importance of virtues like integrity, humility, and fidelity, we must not strike in distrust and anger in hopes of fulfilling our political designs. We must refuse to bow down to a candidate who has demonstrated a complete disregard for the most basic of Christian values time and time again, even if he promises the kingdom of the world in return. Right? So, all in all, I thought that, it was a pretty good article, pretty convincing, And then I wanted to take a minute and just reflect on it. And after doing so, I thought to myself, this is politics. This is picking a presidential nominee, or this is picking the president for that matter. And what matters the most to you? Is it the characteristics, the character of the actual person running, or is it the policies, right? And evangelicals, I wonder for you out there, my question would be, do you care more about the character of the person you're voting for, or do you care more about the policies that they're going to be enacting? And this article is completely saying, regardless of the policies that they're enacting, that's the end, right? And the means to get there would be Donald Trump. The means don't justify the ends here, whereas it has to be virtuous across the entire thing. Virtuous means virtuous end, right? Are you of that camp, or do you believe that the policies that are going to be put in place do justify the means, which would be Donald Trump, right? And then I thought even a little bit more of, are there other examples in the Bible where the same thing occurs, a similar thing occurs with Trump, where the means justify the ends, right? And so I did a little searching on that, and I came up with some, kind of good examples or counter examples to the article. One of them being, the King David, right? He was known for his faith and closeness to God, but he also committed serious sins. He, including adultery with Bathsheba and orchestrating her husband's death. Yet God continued to use David's reign to establish Israel's legacy. And he was remembered as a man after God's own heart, right? There's another well-known one about Jacob, where he was known for deceit when he was, stealing his brother Esau's birthright. Jacob, nonetheless, became the father of the 12 tribes of Israel and was ultimately renamed Israel as a sign of God's covenant, right? So these are just pointing out that there are impure people that are still used, whether by God or used by the people, to get to an ends, and then therefore that argument would state, the means justify the ends, right? So I think, like I said, the article that we were looking at earlier, or the article that I was reading from earlier, excuse me, was a really good article, really well written. But when it comes down to it, I think it has counter arguments that probably balance one another out, right? So I disagree with the sentiment that the means or the ends do not justify the means. I disagree with that from a Trump perspective. I think if you look at the opposite of, this is a presidential election. You have two choices. You have Trump and you have Kamala, and you know the policies that are going to come from each one of those, right? And when you look at that, you need to vote based on the policies that they are going to enact. Think nothing of character, think nothing of morality, anything like that. And I mean, I shouldn't say think nothing about that, because I think that does hold some weight. Kids see these people. People look up to the presidents, people emulate the presidents, etc. There is a lot that is there. But in general, the policy of the president that is going to be setting the policy for all, 300 plus million of us in the United States, I think that's probably more important than the character of the person themselves. And I'm not going to vote based simply on character, right? As I was going through this process and kind of looking these things up, the other thing I wanted to do was just go on the internet real quick and look at, what has President Trump done that are acts of kindness compared to acts of kindness done by Kamala, right? And when I was searching for that, I came across some pretty good points here, right? So I just simply asked ChatGPT, show me some acts of kindness, give me 10 examples that aren't often discussed that Trump has done, and those examples, it goes through. I'll read a couple of them, but it says, number one, help for Marine John Peck. Trump donated $100,000 to help Marine Sergeant John Peck, quadruple amputee, receive a double arm transplant. Helping a disabled child attend college. Trump gave $25,000 to help pay for the college of a tuition of a boy who has cerebral palsy after seeing the family on television. Donating to a fallen firefighter's family. Trump provided a significant financial donation to the widow of a New York City firefighter killed on 9/11, offering his support when many had forgotten. A gift to a bus driver who saved a woman from suicide. Trump provided $10,000 to Darnell Barton, a bus driver who saved a woman from jumping off a bridge, recognizing his heroism. Even things going back to the 80s, where he said he hosted a benefit for AIDS research. In the late 1980s, Trump hosted a benefit in the event in Mar-a-Lago to raise funds for AIDS research when there was significant stigma surrounding the disease. And the list goes on and on of things that Trump has done that are acts of kindness as well, right? When I think of the evangelical, thought process or what they stand for, I think acts of kindness are probably within that. I hope people would agree with that. And there are a lot that can be listed off for Donald Trump, and the majority of them, yes, are giving money to certain causes, but Trump has a lot of money. That's what it's going to be, right? His time is valuable. His time grants him money, and he gives that money away, right? I did the same thing for Kamala then, right? And I said, give me where is it here? Give me 10 less discussed acts of kindness made by Kamala Harris. And the number one, support for same-sex marriage. And it says, a San Francisco district attorney in 2004, Harris officiated same-sex marriages during a brief period they were allowed, showing her early support for the LGBTQ plus rights. So that's the first one. That's very evangelical, right? Sense my sarcasm. Then it goes on to say assistance to homeowners during the mortgage crisis, and how she did something with a bill to receive more money for people standing with students defrauded by Corinthian colleges, support for low-income students, defending immigrants, advocating for domestic violence victims, fighting for essential workers' rights, back to school aid, criminal justice reform for juveniles, bipartisan effort on climate and infrastructure. So everything that ChatGPT gave me, at least, they weren't personal things that she herself had done. They were more so things that she advocated for through her political positions, right? So every politician is going to have a list of these. Every politician that I look up will have a list of things that are good that they advocated for, or they think are good for that matter. There's nothing in here about anything that she has personally done. And one can make the argument that Kamala Harris is not a celebrity. There hasn't been a lot of news or a lot of press in terms of her past on what she has done personally, if she's given anything personally, financially or otherwise, even time. But the list that it gave me was her job, right? What she advocates for via her job, being a politician for this many years, right? So it's a little interesting where you have the one candidate being Trump, who was a businessman and never in politics, and has example after example of things that he's seen that he thought people needed assistance with or aid with or financial assistance, whatever it may be, and he gave to them because he thought that was the right thing to do. And then on the other hand, you have someone who's been a politician essentially their entire lives, and the list is just what they supported. So I would somewhat counter ChatGPT here, saying, when I asked for a list of less discussed acts of kindness made by Kamala Harris, these are not acts of kindness. These are just things that she supports through her job and advocates for through being a politician, which, like I said, every politician should have a long list of good things they're advocating for. That's how they become politicians. That's how they get nominated. That's how they win elections, via good things that they advocate for. So just something for the average listener to think about. And again, I hope you learned a little bit about the evangelical definition, we'll say. Like I said, I was kind of ignorant, kind of feeling stupid going into this. Maybe you're the same way, where you're like, evangelical, I kind of know what that means, but is it actually what it means? And why are they talked about as one specific group, right? It's just literally by how strict they live to the Bible and the messages of the Bible, right? So that was very interesting to me. Again, I'll link to the article that I was reading through in the links below this video, and you can take a look yourself. And then I would encourage you to do a little bit of your own digging and your own thinking on this as well. Again, the guy that wrote this, friend of mine, love him to death. He's a great guy. We rarely talk now, but we had in the past more so. I love his family. I love, brothers and sisters, mother and father. Incredibly, incredibly good people. I thought it was a really well-written article. He had good messaging, good points in there. However, I think his points in there are very much crossed out by other points that can be made. I think other points that can make equal out that argument very simply, and then the ends do mean much more than the means. And if the reason that you're voting for Kamala Harris is because you think Donald Trump is just a bad character, I'm not with you on that one. They're both probably really bad characters in the end, truly. They're both, and I don't know this for sure, just opinion, but, to the level of success, fame, politics that they have risen, they probably both did some bad things, and they probably both have some very bad characteristics about them, like we all do. We're all sinners, right? And I don't claim to be an evangelical. I don't claim to have any authority when it comes to religion. I am a Christian. I am not an awesome Christian. I don't go to church every week. I do try to read the Bible. I do try to look into, what these things mean, what they mean for me. I do pray. My kids are in a Lutheran school growing up. But that said, I'm definitely not a perfect Christian by any means. I sin daily, right? And, I could even joke about that. And I strive to be a better person every day. But regardless, I am not perfect by any means, and I am not an evangelical. Just wanted to give you some information. Again, check out the article in the link below. Do your own research. Let me know what you think, whether the article is well written and you agree, or whether, you disagree and think policy is more important. That's it for today. Thanks, everyone.